Okay, let's be real. We are absolutely drowning in advice, right? Experts, pundits, gurus, they're all telling us what to think, what to do, how to live. But how do you know who you can actually trust? Well, Nassim Nicholas Taleb gave us this incredibly powerful mental model that works like the ultimate BS detector. It's called skin in the game. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it works. But before we get to the solution, we have to understand the problem it solves. And trust me, it is a huge one. It's this fundamental unfairness that's baked right into so many of our modern systems, where a very select few get to play a super dangerous game with other people's money and sometimes their lives. This quote just perfectly captures this messed up setup. Imagine a game where someone can't lose. When things go right, they take all the credit, right? Heads, he wins. But when things go catastrophically wrong, they just throw their hands up and blame a black swan. That's Taleb's famous term for some rare, unforeseeable event. So they get all the upside, and someone else is left holding the bag. And Taleb's poster child for this is what he calls the Bob Rubin trade. So Robert Rubin, a top banking exec, made a fortune promoting these incredibly risky financial products. Then, in 2008, they blew up and helped crash the entire global economy. What happened? Well, taxpayers like you and me had to bail out his bank. And Rubin, he got to keep all his earnings. No penalty. He privatized the gains and he socialized the losses. $120 million. Just let that sink in. That was his reward for taking risks where the downside wasn't his to worry about. It was ours. Now that is the absolute definition of having no skin in the game. So this really gets us to the heart of the problem, this incredibly dangerous asymmetry. You have this whole class of experts and bureaucrats and executives who are completely walled off from the real-world consequences of their decisions. They get to keep the upside, but when their brilliant theories and complex models fail, the public gets stuck with the bill. And the excuse is always the same. Oh, it was a black swan. Nobody could have seen it coming. It's just a deeply frustrating and unfair system, right? But what if the solution wasn't some new, complicated regulation? What if it's an idea that's as old as mythology itself? This brings us to the solution, what Taleb calls the Antheus principle. It's this ancient, powerful idea that the only thing that really keeps us strong and keeps us honest is direct contact with reality. The myth itself is so simple but so profound. You've got this giant, Antaeus, who's basically invincible. But there's a catch. He's only invincible as long as his feet are touching the ground, touching his mother, the earth. The moment the hero Hercules figures this out, he just lifts Antaeus up into the air, separates him from reality, and poof, the giant becomes weak and is easily defeated. It's such a perfect metaphor for so many of our modern experts, isn't it? And this gets us to the real definition of skin in the game. Now, this is crucial. It's not just about getting a bonus if things go well. That's only half the equation. The part that's always missing from the Bob Rubin trades of the world is symmetry. It means having exposure to the harm. It means paying a real-world penalty if your ideas, your decisions, your products go wrong. You see, just like Antaeus, real knowledge, the kind you can actually rely on, can't be separated from contact with the ground. And that contact, that grounding force, comes from bearing the consequences, from actually feeling the sting when things don't work out the way your theories said they would. And this idea is so much bigger than just finance or mythology. Skin in the game, or SITG, is this universal principle. You can apply it to ethics, to how we judge expertise, really to almost every decision you make. It's a fundamental rule for life. I mean, take ethics. We all learned the golden rule. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated. But Taleb makes this brilliant case that the silver rule is actually way more robust. Do not treat others the way you would not like to be treated. See the difference? It's about restraint. It prevents you from imposing your own version of good on other people. Because frankly, we have a much clearer idea of what is harmful than what is truly beneficial for everyone. It respects boundaries. And this is not some new revolutionary idea. The Greek orator Isocrates was saying this over 2,000 years ago. It's the exact same principle of symmetrical risk, just applied to geopolitics. Basically, don't do something to a weaker person or country that you wouldn't want a stronger power to do to you. It's ethics that is grounded in reality. And this is maybe the most practical application of all, using it as an expertise filter. It instantly, almost magically, separates the people who can actually do things from the people who can only talk about things. Think about it. A plumber who comes to fix your leaking pipe has skin in the game. If she fails, you're not call her right back and she's going to have to fix it. An economist whose forecasts are dead wrong for years faces absolutely no penalty. This principle helps you see who's actually got their feet on the ground and who's floating around in the air, like in Tejas. Now, when you start applying this principle, you stumble upon a really surprising, kind of counterintuitive insight into how the world actually changes. And here's a spoiler. It's not through consensus. It's because of a small, committed, and, well, intolerant minority. So picture this. You've got a society where 97% of the people are pretty flexible. They're easygoing. But there's this tiny 3% minority that is completely, totally inflexible about one particular rule. Now, common sense would tell you the 97% wins, right? The majority rules. But in complex systems, the exact opposite happens. Taleb calls this the renormalization process, and it unfolds because of a simple asymmetry. So a person who will only eat non-GMO food will never eat GMO food. But a person who's fine with GMOs can just as easily eat non-GMO. So to make life simpler, the whole family just starts buying non-GMO for everyone. Then they go to a barbecue, and the host, to be nice, just makes everything non-GMO. It's easier. And this preference just keeps scaling up the chain until the whole system has switched. And this reveals this incredible underlying rule of society. A small, inflexible minority that has what Taleb calls soul in the game, this deep, non-negotiable commitment, can, and almost always does, impose its preferences on the flexible and frankly indifferent majority. This is actually how a ton of our societal norms, from what's served on airplanes to deeply held moral values, actually take hold. Okay, so we've talked about the problem, the antidote, and this really surprising consequence. But how do we actually put this powerful idea to work in our own lives? How does it become your own personal BS detector? And this brings us right back to the question we started with. When you're facing a big decision and everyone from journalists to your financial advisor to politicians is shouting at you about what to do, how do you know whose advice is real and whose is just noise? Well, the answer comes from Taleb's fantastic streetwise character, Fat Tony. And it is brutally simple. Never, ever trust advice from someone who doesn't pay a price if that advice turns out to be wrong. It's really the most effective filter you will ever find. So here it is. Here is your takeaway tool. First, trust doers, not talkers. Look for the people who actually have to live with the consequences of their recommendations. Second, be deeply, deeply skeptical of anyone offering you a solution who doesn't pay a price if they're wrong. And third, always, always ask yourself this simple question. What is their downside? Do they truly have skin in the game? And this all leads to a really profound final thought, a redefinition of what it even means to be rational. See, what is rational isn't having the most elegant theory or winning a debate. What is rational is what works in the messy, real world over a long period of time. It's what allows the collective, the family, the tribe, the species to survive. Rationality isn't what you believe. It's about what actions ensure survival. You see, skin in the game is so much more than just a clever concept. It's a whole new lens for viewing the world with clarity. It filters out all the noise, and it reveals who is truly accountable and who isn't. So the next time you hear an expert's opinion, just ask yourself, are their feet planted firmly on the ground, or are they floating safely, comfortably up in the air?